entire plan. Or I'm sure you guys have had times where you've had to say a couple weeks out from a show, like, I might encourage you to not do this show.
For sure. That's a hard conversation to have, but as we've said in the weeks past, being historically correct is always going to be the right thing to do. Oftentimes you'll say, like, listen, I don't think we're going to make it. And they'll be like, you know what, my parents are coming. I just want to do the show. Let's do the best we can. And then we'll do the show 4 weeks or 6 weeks later, and we'll come in better. So absolutely.
Yeah, even for clients, again, in the whole transformation realm, somebody getting ready for a photo shoot, maybe not a contest at all, very similarly, I've had to tell people, you're going to spend $1,000 or so on this photo shoot. You're taking an entire day of this photographer's time, and you're not going to like these pictures. You're just not. Like, cancel it, pay a little fee if you have to, but let's make sure you're in the shape you want, because these are photos you want for professional and personal reasons.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the different approaches you might have. We, even before we talk about front loading, back loading, progressive linear loading, all that stuff, let's talk about the person who is going into this metabolic building phase. So they've had 3, 4, maybe even 6 weeks to start increasing their calories. One of the benefits of that we talked about is you are so much less resilient to fluctuations and spillover. So somebody who might be very carb sensitive, by the time you've doubled their carb intake incrementally over a couple weeks, you can find that you can be really more aggressive with the peaking process. Whereas with other clients, if they're still dieting very, very hard, you just can't make those kind of calls. So as a coach, you build in more opportunities for yourself and your clients if you have them ready early. So do you guys have anything maybe categorically in your brain, like, here's what I do for clients who are still really just trying to squeeze under the wire because they're not quite lean enough, or people who are really on that metabolic building spike, and anything you guys approach differently?
If they're not lean enough, you can't really fill out for peak week. You can't really be as aggressive.
Are you going to say pretty linear then in your approach?
More linear, and I'll tell them ahead of time, like, we're going to get tighter, but realize you probably will get a little tighter this week, but we'll push you to get lean in the beginning, but you're not going to be like substantially leaner and make a huge difference where you're at now. But just know that you're going to come in, we're going to fill out, it's just not going to be as hard, or fill out as hard. But then the ones that are really lean, you have a lot more wiggle room where you can play around a lot more and get a little bit more aggressive. But like bikini girls, you don't really have to fill out that hard. But even, it's just like you talked about with the shows before, the criteria, you got to play that role too, and just have them understand, hey, we don't have to really do a whole lot this week. Just keep where we're at right now. You're good. Let's just stay there.
Yeah, I think the opportunity with an athlete that's not quite ready is that I'll actually have a conversation with them about what they would prefer. Would you rather prefer to come in a little flatter and a little tighter? Or would you rather come in, depending on the vision, would you rather come in really full and hard, but not quite as detailed? And so I'll even have people doing cardio right up to the day of the show. Maybe if I want to load their calories a little bit, their carbohydrates, I'll just keep their cardio higher going into the day of the show, maybe even the morning of the show. I have some people tell me, like, Coach, I look great after the gym, after a good sweat. If that's the best look and that gives them confidence, if we can fit that in the morning of the show where they just feel good that day, I'm happy to do that. But obviously the best scenario is the most shredded a human being can be, because it's almost hard to mess that person up. If you're making errors, they might be a little bit flat. But there's to be very difficult to spill them. So that's obviously the goal. But I usually find that's really only through experience with an athlete. You have to do multiple shows with that person. Very rarely do people get ready ahead of time in their first time competing in their first couple shows.
Mm-hmm. So let's spend the rest of our time talking about those different categorized formats, and with what you just described, and just staying pretty consistent and moderate all the way through. I will say that even though that's not really a formal strategy, you hear it, it's not named like front loading or that kind of thing.
Loading.
I will say one of the best appearances I ever had on stage was, I was dieting pretty hard. I'm pretty endomorphic, and so I really did think I needed to stay leaner. So I stayed at 100 grams of carbs for just 7 days straight, just 100 grams all the way through the show. Had one, kind of a big meal for breakfast, so I had hours to absorb that. And it was the most detailed I'd ever looked. And ironically, I remember Dave Gooden. I don't know how many people remember Dave, but a while ago, prolifically, the greatest
as great a natural bodybuilder as there's ever been.
Yeah, and he was also incredibly conservative like that. He would stay incredibly tight and lean and only have a little bit of food on contest day, and he would be a little bit flatter than I know he could be, because I worked with him for a while after that, and I helped him appear a lot fuller on stage with some advice, but he definitely won a lot of world championships and was the winningest drug-free pro in history for a long time because he was so lean. And I will say, no matter how we start manipulating for fullness and getting all of those variables to try and make sure they're their best, when you're that lean, a little bit of spillover or even just a little bit of body fat storage in the last couple days because you overspill, I mean, some of those things can really make a difference. So I honestly see some of the guys who have the craziest, sickest detail, they just don't monkey around with heavy loading. They just stay really consistent, and it's almost like a runner kind of sprinting to the finish. If I haven't been dieting for 6 months, why am I going to screw that up now? I mean, I'm this lean, nobody's going to beat me on tightness, so I would much rather roll the dice on just being disgustingly detailed.
Yep. If you look great every day in the gym after your workout, there's no need to make huge changes to your variables. I think I probably fought you a little bit this year when we peaked. I was just so happy every single day the way I looked. We didn't really, I guess it was a little bit of the load, but it wasn't super aggressive. Just a couple extra carbs here and there.
And we might have done even better by holding back a little bit more. I mean, you never know. Just to maintain that details and
I was
filling out.
very happy with it. The one thing that as a competitor, the one thing is when you show up on show day, no matter how good you look, if you looked better before, after, the weeks before. So that was the best I'd ever looked on stage. So, the planned approach that we took this year, and this was the first time I ever worked with you, it was just the most confident I've ever been in my look because it was super predictable. It had been something we had been doing throughout the cycle of dieting down. You had prepared me for that.
And that's a perfect encapsulation of what the coach's mindset should be during the peak process, because once you're heading in one direction, I think you have to kind of go all in. I mean, there's not a lot of time to start reversing things and creating these different homeostatic changes in the body. So for you, I'll tell you guys, like, my mindset with Paul is we were getting into the show. I knew he was lean already, and I was with him for several days before the show. So I could see when he was getting flatter and flatter and flatter, and we were already in a position to do a pretty good metabolic building phase, so we were increasing food. So seeing him get flatter, I felt like we just had to keep stepping on the gas, go from third gear to fourth gear to fifth gear, because going into a show that competitive, the Yorton Cup, pro men's physique, you could not be out-muscled. I mean, we want to be as lean as possible, but you want to be big. And knowing that you're going to be a really tall, guy with a lot of frame to fill out, if we just had you looking too thin and wafy, you could be completely at the end of the stage.
Yeah.
So I felt like we said go, keep inching our way. We're monitoring the scale. We're visually taking.
It was actually the lowest that had been all prep like the day before the show.
Yeah, and after just, like I said, just pushing. So we chose that direction, and then it was our decision mutually, even though we're monitoring all of those details every day, like we just had to keep going upward for full.
Which is something I would not have been able to do without the confidence behind me, because that's the most difficult time to be objective, because your mind plays tricks on you. Literally, you can walk by the mirror 1 second and think you're God, and the next minute you walk by the mirror and think, why am I even competing? So you just lose all objectivity.
And that's exactly what you guys have to realize as coaches. This particular week's video talking about the peaking process is how to be an active coach, how to make sure that you've created a plan based on the entire dieting process and what you know your clients to be like up to that point, and then you're monitoring these things day by day by day. But let's talk, Tyler, for a minute now, just to contrast things like front loading, back loading, something that I started doing 20 years ago, undulating loading, and now we'll get into, the progressive linear load that we started. But between front loading and back loading, what's your experience with those kind of things?
I don't really have like a stamp on what I do necessarily, but I've noticed history. I've noticed that when I ever front loaded, they didn't look as good on the show day because then,
What would happen with front loading?
well, they depended on the person, but they would kind of tend to spill over a little bit, and that was kind of what I was looking for.
In the
just
beginning of
under
the
that.
week.
Yeah, and so depending on the person, sometimes if I kept going a little bit and just more moderate, it seemed like things would simulate, more and more, and I'd have to pull back, and I don't like pulling back as much because then it just